The Department of Justice is announcing the unsealing of a superseding indictment filed in the Southern District of New York against 4 defendants, including Nicolas Maduro, as well as the current head of Venezuela's Constituent Assembly, the former director of military intelligence, and a former high-ranking general for their involvement in narco-terrorism. The indictment of Nicolas Maduro and his co-defendants alleges a conspiracy involving an extremely violent terrorist organization known as the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, the FARC, and an effort to flood the United States with cocaine.
On this episode of Just Informed Talk, we're going to take a look at the latest new Q posts. Yes, we have a bunch of new Q posts, and they tell us some important questions to ask, and that is, why is the mainstream media continuing to help push the mass hysteria around this pandemic? And why are they continuing to work in conjunction with the Democrats in Hollywood and the rest to go after President Trump while we're in an actual crisis? Plus, why are they pushing for mail-in voting? We're going to take a look at that and a whole lot more. You guys are going to want to stick around and check it out. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Just Informed Talk. I'm your host, Craig. Today, we are going to start, as we always do, I say thanks. If you've hit that subscribe button, if you haven't, please come here to the landing page, click the big red subscribe button, make sure you hit the bell for notifications, then select all so you get notified as soon as all of these videos get posted. Yes, we have new Q posts. We're picking up right where we left off. We left off at Q post 3908, and we're picking up at 3909. And right before we get into that, I just want to remind everybody, this video is being brought to you in part by Brave Browser. If you haven't downloaded it yet, what are you waiting for? Download the Brave Browser for free using the link in the description today. Install it and run it on your computer, and they'll make a contribution to this channel. It's a great product. It's a better internet browser. It blocks ads. It makes your internet experience that much better. So download the Brave Browser today using the link in the description, and you can get it for free. So we're going to get right into these new Q posts, and there's a lot to cover. So we're going to start right here. Q says read in order. Okay, I guess we'll read them in order. First is this Breitbart article. GOP gears up for next relief fight. Democrats want the federal government to take over elections. No, that seems totally normal, right? I mean, at what point do we, the American people, stand up to this attempted takeover of our entire system, the destruction of our Republican replacement with an authoritarian regime who wants to have these easily controlled elections that can be manipulated so they can continue their power, right? This is what President Trump's been going up against for quite some time, and it seems quite obvious that we're up against much bigger threats than anybody could ever understand. But it says the GOP is gearing up for what could be a contentious battle over the next stage of coronavirus relief as Democrats continue to signal their desire to pursue a variety of changes related to the U.S. election. So why are they trying to change the U.S. election? What does this virus provide them with the perfect justification for? Oh, that's right, for mail-in voting and for all of the ways they can steal it using their voter fraud, because they know that in normal circumstances, they were not only going to lose to President Trump, but they were going to get obliterated in a landslide election loss. And so they had to launch their last attack, I think, is what Q is trying to say. But that's the question. Is that what they're doing? That's the question. The next one that Q wants us to look at is this Fox News article from Harmeet Dillon over on Twitter saying coronavirus and elections, Dems doing this to gain a political edge. Of course, this article, and I'll leave links to these if you want to read the full article, says Democrats are attempting to use the devastation caused by COVID-19 pandemic to take over elections again and to do so permanently. Not content with attacking President Trump and his tireless science, economic, and policy advisors, or gleefully drawing attention to the destruction of the roaring Trump economy, Democrats want to leverage this crisis to massively expand the power of Washington at the expense of the states and individual freedoms. Wholly lacking in irony, of course, the very people who a month ago were calling President Trump a dictator are now attacking him for not ordering an unconstitutional nationwide lockdown. You can't make this stuff up. The irony of what they do, the hypocritical nature of everything that they put forth and all the issues that they want to do, it's basically it's only bad and racist and evil if they're not in control of it, if they're not behind it, if they don't approve of it. And then if it is against anything that they say, then, or if it is within line with what they want, then it's okay. That's the way they politique. And that's what we're up against here. It says the Constitution is often an inconvenient impediment when it comes to partisan politics, which is exactly why, in their wisdom, the framers drafted a constitution with checks and balances, including federalism, which partisan politicians are willing to throw overboard to gain a momentary perceived advantage. And what this article is not really touching on yet is the fact that these Democrats realize their political lives are at stake, if not something more. But I'll leave that for you guys to decide. That's what Q wants us to look at. I'll leave a link if you want to read it. And then, of course, finally, it's this tweet from President Trump where he says, Republicans should fight very hard when it comes to statewide mail-in voting. Democrats are clamoring for it, tremendous potential for voter fraud, and for whatever reason doesn't work out well for Republicans. And he adds Fox and Friends. So, yeah, I think it's 100% true. And I think if we know one thing, we know that the Democrats are desperate and are willing to do anything within their power to try to undo this election of President Trump and to prevent him from winning a re-election. I mean, look at what they've done. They spent the last 3 years trying to wage a coup against him from inside the government. They were lying to the FISA court to get the permissions to spy on him, to try to get dirt so they could overthrow him. They have, at every turn and every corner, put roadblocks in front of his administration and all of their efforts to try to help this country regain its sovereignty and regain its status as the world's #1 economy that was being threatened by countries like China, who had undermined and infiltrated our country, right? And it's fascinating to me to watch this unfold. And Q is going to point it out in perfect, succinct order why we should not trust not only these fake news liars, but their liberal backing or political backers and the rest, and Hollywood and the rest that want to say, orange man bad every day, because they've basically been brainwashed and or they're involved in some pretty evil stuff, in my opinion, right? It says, why did the WHO make several strong recommendations not to impose a travel ban? Well, why do you think? Was the intent to have this virus spread as much as it could within this country? Was the intent behind this virus and those who it may or may not have been a bioweapon and may or may not have been released that way, but if it were released that way, what would they have to gain? Everything you're seeing here, you shut down voting, you make the economy crash, you hurt President Trump and the American people in the process while strengthening other countries who, what would be the advantage for a country like China to have this virus go out and it shuts down all these other countries and our ability to grow and build and have, groups of more than 10 together at a time? I mean, I don't know. You tell me. Could that prevent the movement of an economy? Could that, create an entire class of disenfranchised, disillusioned, angry American citizens at the critical time in an election where China just wants to put its puppets back in place that were controlling our country previously? Did we just forget about Hunter Biden and the $1.5 billion he got from China? Did we just completely forget about the way that the head of the Department of Chemistry at Harvard was just arrested by the FBI for basically working directly with and for and lying about working with the Chinese Communist Party? Has the Chinese Communist Party infiltrated every major university in this country? Did the Chinese Communist Party send spies to go work for Dianne Feinstein? Did the Chinese Communist Party steal our intellectual property, then rebrand it and sell it as their own? Did the Chinese Communist Party do everything in their power to undermine our economic superiority over the last 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 decades with the help of people inside our country, the leaders of this country, who not only may or may not have allowed them to do this, let's just say allowed, and it did happen, but also may or may not have sold them special access program through their quote-unquote foundations. And then these major corporations that are working with these communist dictators over in China, like Google, are helping them basically violate human rights by creating a search engine that can be censored in the way that the Communist Party thinks is appropriate. Well, I'm sure that the Uyghurs and the Falun Gong practitioners over in China really appreciate that, as they're being locked up in these mass internment camps where they're being quote unquote re-educated, while we have politicians inside of this country who are advocating for that kind of re-education style of, communist socialism. This is disgusting, right? Q's telling us to look at the World Health Organization, who just puppets Chinese propaganda. Oh yeah, China. No more virus there. It just disappears. Why? Well, because the government basically stopped reporting on it, stopped testing, shut everything down, or they open everything back up and everything's good as good. So who's at an advantage now and who's at a disadvantage? Our country is in lockdown. It's shut down. And who's opening up? Who's magically cured itself of this disease? Oh, but the mainstream media, listen to them. Trump's evil and everything's bad and racist and China's great and it's insane. I feel like I'm living in Bizarro world with this stuff. Sorry. Q goes on. Why did select Democrat governors ban the use of hydroxychloroquine? Key. Well, here's one that was pointed out by Julian's Rum over here on Twitter. The key will be a robust system of testing and monitoring. This was tweeted out by Obama today, right? Social distancing bends the curve and relieves some pressure on our heroic medical professionals, but in order to shift our current policies, the key will be a robust system of testing and monitoring. What does that mean? That means they don't want a cure. They want to keep testing it and monitoring it. They want it to keep spreading because it's hurting President Trump. How do you shift off current policies? These people aren't even trying to hide the comms that they're putting in the plain view of the public. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. These people are, in my opinion, possibly involved in some very bad things. And they're coming after us, man. This is the big push, right? I tweeted it today and then Q responded, why did select Democrat governors ban the use of hydroxychloroquine? Key. I wonder why they would want to ban a treatment that's effective for helping people, according to the President of the United States, for helping people with this coronavirus. Why would they want to ban that? Well, I don't know, but it does seem interesting. We'll get into that a little bit later. But look, let's keep going. It says, why does the fake news push anti-hydroxychloroquine fear tactics for use? Which is the fish cleaner, the guy whose wife and him ate fish cleaner. I mean, don't eat fish cleaner, people. Like, that should be you don't need me to tell you that. That should be like common sense. It says it on the bottle, I'm sure. Not for human consumption. But if you do that, that's bad. Don't do that. But then the media takes that and uses an excuse to go after President Trump. Why was the impeachment pushed through the House fast? Did they count on Republicans blocking new witnesses? It says time sensitive. Now, and think about what that's talking about. They knew they weren't going to get the witnesses, so they had to push the impeachment through fast. Time sensitive. Why was it time sensitive? And when did Biden become the front runner? Why was this critically important? What happened directly after? Who benefits the most? Everything at stake. When everything else failed, do you attempt to cheat? Welcome to the Democrat People's Republic of China Party. The silent war continues. 6+ Q. Well, if you take that and you kind of extrapolate it to understand what it's telling us, it's, in my opinion, it's saying that there is a very high probability that the impeachment was pushed through so that they could wedge in a Biden candidacy because they needed their guy at the top. They needed to get him into the running, and the only way to do that was to go after President Trump to try to hurt him. And it failed. They failed. So now the Democrat Republic People's Republic of China. That's where we're at. That's why you turn on the news and you literally hear CNN and NBC puppeting, pushing Communist Party propaganda on the American people. I mean, I really feel like, at what point do you actually recognize what the President of the United States of America is saying is true? That these people are the enemy of the people? Because if they're willing to go that way, I don't know that this is going to end well for anyone involved, except hopefully, God willing, the patriots and the people of this country who are standing up for what's right, who are living righteously, living with integrity, and doing the right thing, legally and lawfully. Even when we're up against people who don't follow the law and don't do it legally, we have to be better than that, and we will prevail. Trust me on that. 6+ in the box here, the proverbial kill box, as Q calls it. But one of the Anons pointed out here that Soros is the 6+, right? The $1 trillion guy. So putting him in that box means, I think, that this is his last push to try to possibly do whatever he's doing, right? Yeah. The next one here, National Review article that Q wants us to look at, talking about the last trusted prosecutor in Washington. What I thought was interesting about this article is this part right here, where it says a passion for anonymity. It says former Attorney General Mike Mukasey says, or who appointed Durham to investigate the destruction of videotapes of CIA waterboarding, says he was recently contacted by a reporter in Connecticut who wanted to write a profile on Durham, whom the reporter said he knew. Quote, I called John to check the accuracy of that claim, and he confirmed that he knew the reporter, but made it clear and specific that he had no use for personal profiles. Mukasey said he thinks about the work, period, not about how it will be received in this or that quarter, or what caricatures people with a motive or a bias may draw of his work or of him. It is for that reason that I think he will be unaffected by the pressure of how his work will be received and how he will be portrayed. Indeed, how some in the media have already started to portray him. Mukasey said Durham reminded him of the title of Franklin Roosevelt advisor Louis Brownlow's autobiography, A Passion for Anonymity. He's an anon. He has a passion for being an anon. That's an interesting way to put it in the article. Remember, John Durham was appointed as in his position on the same day that Q started, right? In the position that he's working right now. Is that a coincidence? October 28th, 2017. You tell me. You look it up. You tell me. All right? But just throwing that out there, Q wants us to look at that. Plus, here in the next article, this BBC article, Q gives us a highlighted quote, and it's from this article right here, where it says that it says H. James Pickerstein, a former chief assistant U.S. attorney who hired Mr. Durham in the 1980s, told the Washington Post last year that the prosecutor relied on a good versus evil vision of the world while leading the investigation into Mr. Rowland. John is a dedicated prosecutor who sees things in absolute terms, he said. So what I think we're hearing now from Q is that Durham is the key to all of this, that they're doing everything they can to stop what Durham's investigating, to throw wrenches in it to get President Trump out of office. And can you really blame them at this point? I don't think they have much of a choice. And at this point, I'm going to leave it to you guys to tell me what you think down in the comments, because I don't want to, really put too much there. You guys let me know what you think. The next Q post, have you ever witnessed the media, Hollywood, Democrat Party, full foreign leaders, foreign media, etc., push so much hatred toward a sitting U.S. president? Why are division tactics necessary? Coordinated, defined propaganda, infiltration instead of invasion. They will stop at nothing to regain power. Q. Now remember, I told you guys for the last 2-3 years, these people, from what I can tell, from what I can see, in my opinion, would rather destroy this country than to be held accountable for their crimes, to have their corrupt activities exposed and to lose the power that they've held for generations. That's what we're up against here. And until people wake up and realize that, I don't think that the public is really going to be able to understand the enormity of what President Trump's undertaking now. And when I talk about that, I talk about the cartels too. That's what this is. Who are who are the thugs, the minions, the henchmen for these global cartels, right? They're the actual drug cartels, the trafficking cartels. And another thing that I want to say, there's a lot of stories out there and reporting about how, the CIA and sold cocaine to fund operations and sold different drugs and did different things. whether that's true or not, there's a lot of evidence for certain cases, and then there's a lot of speculation. Let me just say this. If our government was condoning, or at least at some point looking the other way or allowing them, our intelligentsia, the intelligence community, to take and sell narcotics or to engage in human trafficking or engage in other types of illegal activities to fund black operations, what if that is the case? I'm just saying hypothetically, right? What do you think countries like China are doing? What do you think countries like Russia are doing if they see us doing that? You don't think they're going to go and start working with the cartels? You don't think they're going to go and start doing the same thing to fund their own dark operations, their own black operation stuff? This is getting into the realm of us uncovering the most corrupt system in the world. And President Trump, that's why I think when he gives the press conferences, he says, what we're uncovering is disgraceful. And that's a very particular word to use, because I think that what he's saying is that it's disgraceful that certain individuals engage in this. It's disgraceful. It's disgusting. It's anti-American. It's anti everything that we've stood for, yet it's been going on in the dark for so long. That's why we keep saying dark to light. Q says, read and discern for yourself. Go look it up for yourself. Don't trust me. Go out and research for yourself. This is just a starting point, right? Look up the Iran-Contra. Look at what they were doing with the Sandinistas. Look at what happened in all of these different areas around the world. And then think to yourself, if that was happening and we know about that, what do you think China's doing? What do you think Russia's doing? What do you think these other countries are doing? Please use the common sense, right? The next one here is this tweet from Chris Berg saying this Minnesota senator and doctor said that he received a 7-page document from Minnesota Health to fill out death certificates with a diagnosis of COVID-19, whether the person actually died from COVID-19 or not. So the question is, why is a Minnesota doctor having to come out on television here, and report that he's being instructed to place a cause of death on a death certificate without confirmation of that being the actual diagnosis or that actual being the cause of death? I mean, I'm speechless. I'll play the clip.
You just said, I think is critically important. Can you repeat what you just said, please?
Well, last Friday, I received a 7-page document that sort of told me that if I had an 86-year-old patient that had pneumonia but was never tested for COVID-19, but sometime after she came down with pneumonia, we learned that she had been exposed to her son who had no symptoms, but later on was identified with COVID-19, that it would be appropriate to diagnose on the death certificate COVID-19. Now, we've not done that. If someone has the pneumonia after and it's in the middle of a flu epidemic, and I don't have a test on influenza, I don't diagnose influenza on the death certificate. I will say this elderly patient died of pneumonia.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but my heart is sinking right now as you're telling me this. You're a doctor. Why in the world would they be sending you out information to fill out death certificates, whether the person's been diagnosed with COVID-19 or not, but then to say in the death certificate this person's death was caused by COVID-19? That does not sound right to me.
I went to the person in our office who does most of the death certificates over the last 10, 20 years, and I said, does this sound right? I had her look at the documents that I printed off, and she said, well, we've always been told that you always put down just facts. You don't put down any probabilities. You don't put any presumptions down. It's just what you know. And so this is concerning, and it actually gets to your point, Chris. When we start talking about the data that goes into the modeling, we have to ask ourselves a question. Are we being forthright? Are we sharing with the public? Minnesota, North Dakota, we don't need to be having it sugar-coated. We want to know what's going into your modeling.
So with that being said, why would they want to skew the number of deaths due to COVID-19?
Well, fear is a great way to control people, and I worry about that. I worry that sometimes we're so darn interested in just jazzing up the fear factor.
So you heard it right there. Fear is a good way to control people. This is bad, guys. So we have to, put the light on it. We have to, call our senators, call our representatives, tell them this is unacceptable, force accountability, and make sure that this doesn't continue to happen. I mean, that's at what point, it says here, Q says, what is the primary benefit to keep the public in mass hysteria regarding COVID-19? Think voting. Are you awake yet? Q. So, yeah. This is what we're up against, people. Do you think that they would use something like this to try to manipulate us and control us? Do you think that this virus can be weaponized by being propagandized and used as a way to control people through fear? By telling people not to look into alternatives for how to treat yourself, to suppressing thought, to removing people's ability to have free speech, to talk about what they want to do and how they want to treat themselves for it. Silencing doctors who are coming forward now and showing us that they're being told to jazz up the numbers, as that doctor just said. Look, whatever you think about this, whether you're on the right or left or Republican or Democrat, whatever, we're in this together. We are still a nation. We should be trying to help each other break ourselves away from this cabal's death grip that they've had over us for so long, that President Trump has finally pushed away, right? Instead, we've allowed them to sow the seeds of division inside our own society to keep us warring with each other, while they come in and loot and pillage and plunder our entire civilization. But are you awake yet? Have you awakened yourself and others that you know, your family and friends, and told them about what's happening here? Because if we don't start waking up, we're going to lose. We have to wake up the entire world to what's happening, because we outnumber them by a lot, and that's what they're so afraid of. So remember that. And the last Q post here is the armor of God, which talks about the world will soon understand Q. And we'll talk about that more for this final episode or the final segment at the end of the show for God's Grace is Greater, if you want to stick around for that. Couple other things that I wanted to cover before we sign off. Did you guys know that there was a World Military Games in Wuhan held in October of 2019 that had militaries from all over the world, over 140 nations participating, including the United States? Did you know that it's being reported that lots of the athletes there were mysteriously sick during the competition? Yeah, that's an interesting little thing. If you guys want to look it up, the 2019 Military World Games, it's almost impossible to find video footage of this, but there is some documentation of the athletes who were participating and the individuals and how they, ended up doing. But I thought it was very interesting that right there in Wuhan, they held the 2019 Military World Games. And that some of the athletes participating in these games were too sick to compete, according to multiple reports. Perhaps it's something to look into more closely. I don't know. I'll leave that for you guys. Not to mention, do we really trust the Chinese? Because this is the same government that still is reporting that there were 0 deaths at the Tiananmen Square riots. So, yeah, or protests, I should say. So, yeah, that's who we're trusting. That's who the mainstream media, that's who CNN and MSNBC and CNBC and NBC and CBS and YouTube and New York Times and Google and the Washington Post, that's who they're believing. That's who they're siding with. It makes you really think about how we really trust these corporations? I'm not sure. That's who they're siding with, though. Not to mention, the people who don't benefit from a widely available generic drug are companies like Gilead and the rest. Maybe that's has something to do with why they won't push hydroxychloroquine. I don't know. I'm only asking the question. So, that's pretty much where we're going to go ahead and leave it. A few more things before we go. I always say thanks. If If you guys have watched these videos, share them on your social media. We're breaking the content suppression algorithms every day, which is why they've ramped it up. And they, like I said in the last episode, they finally kicked me out of the monetization program at YouTube. Not that it really matters, since none of my videos were being monetized anyway. But that is what they're doing, and they're going after other patriots out there. For instance, you guys may know one of the sponsors to this show called redpillliving.com. Well, not anymore. They've been thrown in the memory hole by the thought police, and the situation behind it is I'm still looking into it, but basically the store is unavailable. The shop's been kicked off the platform. They're trying to fight back to get it up, but they're moving against all of us. They're trying to destroy anyone who's associated with this movement, and they have millions and billions of dollars and unlimited power. So that's what's happening on our end, but it doesn't matter because the message will never die, and we will never stop pushing this information out there, and we will never stop exposing this no matter what they do, right? So I just thought I'd point that out, and, you know, that's just where we're at right now. Also, a few other ways you can come check out the channel are here. You can find me over here at Just Inform You. It's a great way to connect outside the channel. I'm on justinformednews.com, the official website for Just Informed Talk. BitChute.com/JustInformedTalk is the backup channel. And if you guys want to help keep this channel going in the face of all this attack, they're trying to put everyone out of business, come over here. You can support it. Patreon, patreon.com. It's a crowdfunding website. It's a monthly donation. You can set it up, set it and forget it. No, you're helping create content on this channel. Without you guys, this channel will not make it. So if you guys like this channel and want to see me make more content, please consider being a patron over here. Or you can give a one-time or anonymous donation. Links to everything that we talked about will be in the description below. Now, before we go, we do a segment at the end of each one of these episodes called God's Grace is Greater, where we talk about God's grace and how it is truly greater. And today, like I said, I'm going to share the words out of Ephesians right here about putting on the armor of God and understanding what we as Christians are up against here. And these are very profound words. It's Ephesians chapter 6, verse 10 through 17. Appropriate enough, I guess, right? It says, "Finally, be strengthened by the Lord and by his vast strength. Put on the full armor of God so that you can stand against the tactics of the devil. For our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the world, powers of this darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavens. This is why you must take up the full armor of God, so that you may be able to resist in the evil day, and having prepared everything to take your stand, stand therefore with truth like a belt around your waist, righteousness like armor on your chest, and your feet sandaled with readiness for the gospel of peace. In every situation take the shield of faith, and with it you will be able to extinguish the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is God's word." And that's what we're called to do, right? I know for me, I've always said from the beginning, I just put God first above all else. When things happen, I say to myself, whether good or bad, that it's a part of God's plan for me, and I have to either overcome it if it's affliction, right? And then that overcoming that will produce proven character that will justify, you know, how I live my life and help me become wiser and more mature. And if it's good, I thank God. I drop to my knees and say, thank you, God, for this blessing. But I never take any of it for granted. And I want you guys to remember that in this battle of good versus evil, it may not be easy. And God's plan may have things that we don't understand and we may not, be able to fully grasp at the time. But we have to keep our faith in God and keep our faith in helping one another and living righteously, because what else can we do? That's our lot in life, is to put God first, to honor him, to live a Christ-like life, and to do our best to help others, and to not be the judge. Let God be the judge. I know it's tough, but that's my message to you. Share that with your family, friends, and loved ones. And that's where we're going to go ahead and leave it. I want to say thank you for watching this episode of Just Informed Talk. My name is Craig. You guys come here and hit the like button if you guys haven't already. But that's going to be it for me. Thanks for watching. Godspeed and God bless each and every one of you, Patriots.